Hey everyone, welcome to part 34 of my Pokemon game series in Unity. So in this video we will implement the catching mechanic. So we haven't implemented the items and inventory system yet. So what I've done is, if we choose the bag action, we'll use the Pokeball and try to catch the wild Pokemon. So we'll change this once we implement the inventory system. But for now, we'll just use the bag action to throw the Pokeball. So if I select the bag action, you can see that I'll throw the Pokeball and we'll try to capture. So this time I wasn't successful and the Pokemon broke out of the Pokeball. But if we reduce the health of the Pokemon, then we'll have more chance of catching it. Alright, so now if I try to catch the Pokemon, you can see that I was able to catch the Pokemon successfully and the Pokemon will be added to our party. So let's look at how to implement this. Special thanks to all my Patreons for making the series possible. By becoming a Patreon, you can support me in the making of the series and get access to some cool rewards like the complete project files of the series, which also contains some advanced features that are not covered here. So let's start the video. So first, we need to create a game object for the Pokeball. So for that, first we need to import a sprite for it. So inside my art folder, I'll create another folder called items. And I'll drag and drop my Pokeball sprite sheet into it. So let's change its import settings. I'll change the sprite mode to multiple, pixel per unit to 32, filter mode to point no filter, and compression to none. Okay, I'll hit apply. And now we can open this in the sprite editor and slice this into individual sprites. So I'm just going to slice this automatically. Okay, so now you can see that the sprites are sliced properly. So this is a sprite that I need. So I'll just rename this to Pokeball. Okay, and I'll hit apply. So next I'll create a game object for our Pokeball. So I'll go ahead and add a sprite and I'll rename this to Pokeball. And for the sprite, I'll just choose my Pokeball sprite. So we want the Pokeball to be rendered on top of the battle system, right? So for that, what I'll do is I'll create a new sorting layer called battle. Wait, I don't want to add a layer. I want to add a sorting layer instead. So I'll create a new sorting layer called battle. And it'll be below all the other game objects so that it appears on the top. Alright, so first I'll assign my battle canvas to the battle sorting layer. Okay, and I'll keep the order in layer as 0. And then I'll assign the Pokeball also to the battle sorting layer. And for the Pokeball, I'll set the order in layer to 10 so that it will appear on top of our battle system. Okay, so let's test that by enabling our battle system and placing the Pokeball on top of it. Okay, so you can see that it is being rendered on the top just like we want. So I want to instantiate this Pokeball from the code. So what I'll do is I'll turn this into a prefab. So inside my game folder, this is where we keep all our prefabs. So here I'll create another folder called items. And I'll drag and drop my Pokeball game object into this folder. So this will turn it into a prefab. And now we can just delete our Pokeball from the scene. So let's also disable our battle system since we don't want it to be active by default. So next, let's try to instantiate the Pokeball prefab from the code. So for that, first we need a reference to the Pokeball game object. So inside my battle system script, I'll create a variable to store the Pokeball game object. Okay, and then I'll create a function called throw Pokeball. So this function is going to be a coroutine. So inside this function, first I'll set the state to busy so that nothing else will happen when throwing the Pokeball. And then I'll show a dialog like the player used the Pokeball. Alright, and then we need to instantiate the Pokeball prefab. So to instantiate the prefab, we can use the instantiate function. And to the function, first we need to pass the game object to instantiate. So that will be our Pokeball sprite. And then we can pass the position at which we want to instantiate it. So let's say I want to instantiate it at the position of my player Pokemon. So for the position, I'll pass player unit dot transform dot position. Okay, and finally, we need to pass the default rotation in which the prefab should be instantiated. So we don't want it to have any rotation. So for the rotation, I'll pass quaternion dot identity. Okay, so this is what you use if you don't want any rotation. So this function will return a reference to the instantiated object. So I'll show this in a variable called Pokeball object. Alright, so next, to make this function easy to test, I'll call this function when the user presses the T button. Okay, T for test. So inside my handle update function, if the user presses the T button, I'll call the throw Pokeball coroutine. Okay, so let's go to Unity and test this. So before we test, we need to assign the Pokeball sprite to our battle system script. So let me do that. And now let's test the game. So if I start a battle, all right, and if I press T, oops, we have a null reference error at line number 601. So let's go to that line. Okay, so it's this line. So we are getting the null reference exception when calling player.name. So if we look at the definition of our player variable, we are assigning the player from start trainer battle function, but we are not doing it from start battle function, right? So in the case of a wild Pokemon battle, we are not actually initializing this and its value will be null. So that's why we are getting the null reference exception. So let's also initialize the player from the start battle function. And now let's test this. Okay. So now if I press T, you can see that first we are showing this dialog, and after that we are instantiating the Pokeball prefab at the position of the player Pokemon. Alright, so next we need to implement the Pokeball throwing and capturing animation. So these animations can be divided into 4 steps. First, we need to throw the Pokeball to a position on top of the enemy Pokemon. Second, we need to play the animation where the enemy Pokemon is put inside the Pokeball. Third, the Pokeball should drop down. And fourth, the Pokeball should shake. Okay, so we can create all these animations by using doTween. Alright, so let's do that. So inside our throw Pokeball function, first I'll grab a reference to the Pokeball sprite from the Pokeball game object so that it's easier to animate. So I'll show this in a variable called Pokeball, and I'll say Pokeball object dot get component, and we need to get the sprite. So I'll get the sprite renderer of the game object. Okay, so next we need to implement the animations. So first we need to throw the Pokeball at the enemy Pokemon. So I'll use DoTween for implementing all our animations. So to throw the Pokeball, I can say Pokeball.transform and then call the doMove function of DoTween. So in order to use doMove, we have to import the DoTween library. And now you can see that we have a function called doMove. Alright, so we can throw the Pokeball towards the enemy Pokemon using doMove. But the problem with doMove is that it will move the Pokeball towards the target position in a straight line. So instead of doMove, I'll use doJump. So doJump will make the Pokeball jump towards the target position. So it'll look like we are throwing the Pokeball. Alright, so I'll be using doJump. And for the first parameter, we have to pass the target position. So the target position will be the position of the enemy unit. And I want the target position to be little above the enemy's position. So I'll add a vector of 0, 2. Alright, so the target position will be 2 units above the enemy's position. So next we need to pass the jump power. So I'll just pass 2 for it. You can play around with this value and find another number that you like, but I'll just go with 2. And next, for the number of jumps, we just need 1 jump. And finally, for the duration, I want the animation to play in 1 second. So I'll pass 1. Alright, so this will throw the Pokeball at the enemy Pokemon. So before playing the next animation, I want to wait until this animation is complete. So for that, in DoTween, we can use the wait for completion function. And this will return a coroutine. And then we can simply use the yield return in order to wait until this animation is complete. Okay, so we have an error here. So since position is vector 3, we need to add vector 3 to it. Okay, so now the error is gone. So we're done with the Pokeball throwing animation. But one thing I'm going to change is right now we are instantiating the Pokeball at the player Pokemon's position, right? But I don't want to start throwing the Pokeball from there. Instead, I want this position to be towards the left of the player Pokemon. So I'll subtract 2 from the player Pokemon's X position. Okay, so now if you test, this is how the animation should look like. So next let's implement the capture animation that will put the enemy Pokemon inside the Pokeball. So since this is an animation on the Pokemon, I'll actually implement it inside the battle unit script. Alright, so we already have lots of animations over here. So here I'll create another function called play capture animation. So first I'll create a sequence. So in the sequence, first I want to fade the image of the Pokemon and make it transparent. So I'll use image dot do fade and I want to fade the alpha to 0 and I want to do it in 0.5 seconds. Okay, so next, while fading the image, I also want to move the Pokemon up towards the Pokeball. So since we want to play both animation at the same time, I'll use sequence.join, and to move the Pokemon up, I'll say transform dot do move y, and for the y position, I'll pass the original y position minus 50. Okay, so we also want to do this animation in 0.5 seconds. So I'll set the duration as 0.5. So next, along with these two animations, I also want to reduce the scale of the Pokemon when it is moving towards the Pokeball. okay, just to make it feel like the Pokemon is going inside the Pokeball. So for that, I'll say transform dot to scale. So I want to reduce the scale to zero point 0.3, and once again I want to do this in 0.5 seconds. So we're done with the capture animation, and I want to wait till this capture animation is complete. So I'll call sequence dot wait for completion. All right, and in order to wait, we have to make this function a coroutine. Okay, so let's call this function from battle system. So after throwing the ball towards the enemy Pokemon, I'll call enemy unit dot play capture animation, and I'll add yield return at the start since this is a coroutine. Okay, so we're done with the capture animation. So this is how it's going to look like. So next we want to drop the Pokeball towards the enemy unit's platform. So for that I'll say Pokeball dot transform dot to move y. So I want to move it down by 1 unit. So for the position, I'll pass the current position minus 1. Okay, and I want to do this in 0.5 seconds. So let's also call wait for completion and wait until this animation is complete. Alright, so finally let's make the Pokeball shake. So let's say we want to make it shake 3 times. So I'll create a for loop that will run 3 times. And inside it, to make the Pokeball shake, we can call pokeball.transform dot do punch rotation. So this will rotate the Pokeball in multiple directions randomly. And for the first parameter, we have to pass a punch value, which is the strength of the rotation. So for that, I'll pass a vector 3, which is going to have 0 for x and y. But for z, I'll say 10. All right. In 2D, we'll only do rotation in the z axis. And the second parameter is the duration. So I want this to happen for, let's say, 0.8 seconds. All right. So let's call dot wait for completion. So this will shake the Pokeball 3 times. And let's say between each shake, I want to wait for 0.5 seconds. So I'll call wait for seconds coroutine. Okay, so we're done with all the animation. So let's test this. So if I start a battle and if I press T, oops, looks like there are some issues in the code. So first issue is we want to move the Pokemon up towards the Pokeball, right? So the target position should be original position plus 50, okay, not minus 50. The next issue is if you look at the original position, you can see that it's actually the local position of the image. So since we're dealing with local position, we need to use do local move y instead of do move y. Okay, so let's test this now. So if I start a battle and press T, okay, our animations are working correctly. I can only see one problem. I want the Pokeball to drop at the center of the platform. So while dropping the Pokeball, I'll set the target position to current my position minus 1.3. Okay, so this should be better. And yes, that looks much better. So now we're done with the animations. So next we'll use an algorithm to determine if the Pokemon is caught or if it'll break out of the Pokeball. So we'll use this formula from Gen 3 and 4 to check if a Pokemon is caught. So here, first we'll calculate a value A based on Pokemon's current HP, its catch rate, status condition, and all that. Okay, and then we'll use the value of A to calculate a new value B. And finally, the value of B is used to determine how many times the Pokeball should shake. So let's call it shake count. And the shake count will be between 0 and 4. And if the shake count is equal to 4, then the Pokemon will be caught. And otherwise, the ball will shake that many number of times and the Pokemon will break out. Okay, so let's actually implement this formula inside a function. So inside my battle system script, I'll create a new function called try to catch Pokemon. And this function will take a Pokemon. Okay, so note that this function is returning an integer. So basically it's returning the shake count. So inside this function, first let's calculate the value of A. So this is the equation to calculate A. And here you can see that we don't have some of the values that are required in this equation. So right now, we don't have the catch rate of the Pokemon and we don't have status bonus. So first let's add the catch rate. So every Pokemon should have a catch rate which determines how easy or hard it is to catch that Pokemon. Okay, so I'll add catch rate to my Pokemon base class. So I'll create an integer called catch rate. So its value is going to be between 0 and 255. So if it's 255, then it means it'll be easy to catch that Pokemon. And if it's a rare Pokemon that's hard to catch, then it'll have a low catch rate. You can find the catch rate of all the Pokemon from Bulbapedia. So here, I'll just give a default value of 255 to the catch rate. And then I'll create a property to expose it. So here is a short way to create properties. So if the property only needs the getter, then we don't have to write it in this format. Instead, we can simply write it like this. So it's much shorter, right? So now in the battle system, for the catch rate, I can say Pokemon dot base dot catch rate. Okay. So next we need the status bonus. So if the Pokemon has a status condition like sleep, poison, or paralyzed, it will be easy to catch the Pokemon. Okay. So in Bulbapedia, you can see that the status bonus is 2 for sleep and freeze, and it's 1.5 for paralyze, poison, and burn. So what I'll do is inside my conditions DB, I'll create a public static function called get status bonus, and this function will return a float and take a condition as the parameter. Okay, so if the condition is null, then the status bonus will be 1. Otherwise, if condition is equal to sleep or if condition is equal to freeze, then the status bonus will be 2. And finally, if condition is paralyzed, poison, or burn, then the condition will be 1.5. And if none of this is true, then we'll simply return 1. Okay, so that's how we'll find the status bonus. So let's call that from the battle system. So I'll call condition db dot get status bonus, and for the condition I'll pass Pokemon dot status. Okay, so we're done with the calculation of A. So if A is greater than or equal to 255, then it means the Pokemon will be caught. So we can return 4. So remember, if the shake count is 4, it means Pokemon will be caught. Okay, so if it's not greater than 255, then we have to calculate another value B. So this is the formula for calculating B. And finally, we can use the value of B to find the number of shake count. So initially I'll set the shake count to 0, and to calculate the shake count I'll run a loop for 4 times. Okay, and inside the loop what we'll do is we'll calculate a random number between 0 and 65,535. Okay, and if this random number is greater than or equal to B, then we'll break the loop. Okay, and otherwise we'll update the shake count and continue the loop. So if the first time we run this loop, if the random number is greater than B, then we'll break it immediately and the value of shake count will be 0. If it's the second time, then shake count will be 1, and if it's third time, it will be 2, and so on. Okay, so this is how we find the shake count from the value of B. So now we can just return the value of shake count. All right, so let's actually call this function from here. Okay, and for the Pokemon I'll pass the enemy Pokemon. So now instead of shaking the Pokeball 3 times, we can shake it according to the number of shake count. Okay, but the value of shake count can be 4, but at max we only want to shake it for 3 times. So what I'll do here is I'll say mathf.min of shake count comma 3. So what this will do is if shake count is lesser than or equal to 3, then it will use the shake count itself, but if the shake count is 4, then it will only shake for 3 times. Okay, so next, if the shake count is equal to 4, then it means the Pokemon is caught, and otherwise it means the Pokemon broke out. So if the Pokemon is caught, then we can show a dialog like the Pokemon was caught, and then we can slowly fade the Pokeball. So I'm doing it in 0.5 seconds, and then we can just destroy the Pokeball game object, and then we can end the battle by calling battle over. So next, if the Pokemon broke out, then I want to play the breakout animation, but before doing that I actually want to wait for 1 second. So I'll call wait for seconds, and I'll wait for 1 second, and then I'll just fade the Pokeball to 0 very quickly. So I'll do that in 0.2 seconds, and at the same time it's fading, I want to play the breakout animation. So the breakout animation will be the opposite of the capture animation. So I'll just copy this and rename this to play breakout animation, and here I want to fade it to 1, which means I'll make the image visible. Then I want to move the Pokemon back to its original position. So let me remove this 50. And finally, I want to change its scale back to 1. Okay, so Pokemon will break out of the Pokeball and return to its normal position. So let's call this. Okay, and I want to wait until it's complete. So here for the do fade, you can see that I'm not waiting. That's because I want both of this to happen at the same time. We can also achieve this by using sequence, but in this case, I think not waiting is the better solution. So after playing the animation, I can show a dialogue like the Pokemon broke free. Actually, I can show different dialogue based on the shake count. So if the shake count is less than 2, then I'll show this dialogue, and otherwise I'll just say something like almost got it. So yeah, you can have a different dialogue for each shake count. So after showing the dialogue, I can just destroy the Pokeball, and in this case we don't want to end the battle. Instead, we should continue the battle, right? So what I'll do is I'll set the state back to running turn in order to continue the battle. So we are almost done with the catching mechanic, but once the Pokemon is caught, we should add the Pokemon to our party, right? So what I'll do is in the Pokemon party script, I'll create another function called add Pokemon. So this will take a Pokemon as the parameter, and we simply have to add it to the list of Pokemons in the party, right? But I only want to add it if the current party has less than 6 Pokemons. Okay, so in this case, I'll add a new Pokemon to the party. Okay, so let me actually rename this parameter to new Pokemon because that makes more sense. And if we already have more than 6 Pokemons in our party, then we should transfer this new Pokemon to our PC, right? But we haven't implemented PC yet. So for now, let me just add a to do, and we can do this once we implement PC. So now let's actually call this function from our battle system script. Okay, so once the Pokemon is caught, I'll add the Pokemon to the player party. Okay, and I'll also show a dialog saying the Pokemon has been added to your party. So next I want to handle an edge case. So we should not allow the user to catch the Pokemon if it's a trainer battle, right? So at the start of the function, I'll check if it's a trainer battle. Then I'll show a dialog like you can't steal the trainer's Pokemon. And then I'll set the state back to running turn in order to continue the battle. And finally, I'll just use yield break in order to break out of the coroutine. Okay, so we are done with the implementation of catching mechanic. So we are actually calling this function when the user presses the T button, right? But instead of this, what I'll do is I'll throw the Pokeball when the user selects the bag option. Okay, so when the bag option is selected, I'll call the run turns coroutine, and for the action, I'll pass battle action dot use item. Okay, so we have to put this inside start coroutine. So yeah, just like we do for move, we are calling run turns and passing. use item as the action. So let's go inside the run turn, and here we are handling the move and switch Pokemon action. So here I'll say else if player action is equal to battle action dot use item. Then we'll just call the throw Pokeball coroutine. Okay, and I also want to disable the action selector when we are using an item. So let me do that. Okay, so that's it. So now we should try to catch the Pokemon when we use the bag action. Okay, so let's test that. So let me start a battle real quick. All right, and if I choose the bag action, you can see that we'll throw a Pokeball, and wow, we actually caught the Pidgey. And you can see that Pidgey has been added to our party. So if we start another battle, oops, we are getting this weird bug. So there are some more issues that we need to fix. So the first issue is while playing the capture animation, we are setting the scale of the enemy Pokemon to zero point 0.3, right? So that's why it was very small when we tested. So in our setup function, we should reset the scale back to 1. So now when starting a new battle, the scale of the enemy unit will be reset. So there is also another issue that we need to solve. So inside of a game controller, when starting a battle, we are randomly selecting a wild Pokemon from our map area, right? So the problem is if we directly pass the reference of this Pokemon to the battle, then when we catch the Pokemon, we will have the Pokemon inside the map area in our party, right? The same Pokemon. So what we have to do is instead of directly passing the wild Pokemon, we have to create a copy of it and then pass that. All right. So how can we make a copy of an object? So for that, what I'll do is in our Pokemon class, I'll create a constructor which we can use to create a new instance of the Pokemon. Okay. So basically we can use this to create a copy of the wild Pokemon. So to the constructor, we have to pass the base and the level. So let me do that. And in here, I'll assign it to our private variables. Okay. So this should be Pokemon base and not Pokemon. So yeah, the error is gone. So finally, I'll call the init function from the constructor to initialize the moves and stats and all that. Okay, so let me call init. And now in the game controller script, when starting a battle, first we'll create a copy of the wild Pokemon instead of passing the class directly. So we can do that by using the constructor, and I'll pass the base and level of the wild Pokemon. Okay, so instead of passing the wild Pokemon directly, I'll pass the copy. So now the Pokemon in the battle will actually be a copy of the one in the map area, right? So even if we catch the Pokemon, the one in the map area will be different. So let's test this now and see if the issues are solved. Okay, so let me throw a Pokeball. And yeah, you can see this time the Pidgey broke out. Oops, looks like we have another error. So it's in line 121. So it's because that the status changes queue is not initialized. So let me see. So yeah, we are initializing the status changes queue by defining it itself. So the problem is when we create a new copy, it is not initialized. So instead what we can do is we can actually initialize it inside the init function. I don't know why I initialized it from there. So let me initialize it from here. Okay, so let's test it. And this time, hopefully we won't have any issues. Okay, so if I throw a Pokeball, all right, the Pidgey was caught. And you can see that it's added to our party. So let's start another battle. And yeah, this time we don't have any issues. The wild Pokemon is spawned correctly. But now, if we look at our party, you can see that we also have a Pidgey that we just caught. Okay, so let's try throwing the Pokeball again to test the breakout condition. Okay, so the Pidgey broke free and it used an attack. So yeah, that's working fine. So if we try to reduce Pidgey's health, then we'll have more chance of catching it. Okay, so the health is much lower now. And now if I try to use a Pokeball again, hopefully it should be caught. All right. So awesome, we have implemented the Pokemon catching mechanic. So I'll stop the video here. If you think this videos are helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. And also, if you can afford it, you can also support the series by becoming a Patreon. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.